All right, welcome back to another episode of the Sea Level Podcast. We have a first-time guest on the show today, Rich Waltz, CBS Sports, Apple TV, and now recently the relief for Aaron Goldsmith for the Mariners. Rich, how are you doing today? Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, they essentially do that. They say,
Yep.
I'm good. I'm good. It was fun to do that game, and I've got a few more in the second half, and it's nice to be invited. It's really fun to dip my toe back into Mariner Nation. Did some radio filling in for Rizzy last year, and got invited back to fill in on TV this year. So I live in the Seattle area. I'm back here from living on the East Coast. So anytime I can do a game and not get on a plane, that's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, I personally love it because I'm familiar with you. I grew up in Boise, huge Boise State football fan, and you've
Uh,
been a soundtrack to a lot of good memories for me over there. Can you just take the listeners through kind of your journey, the journey of your career so far, both in baseball and football and other sports, and kind of what part the Mariners have played in that?
well, the Mariners played a big part because that was my first taste of the major leagues, and it came after climbing through the minor leagues. I was a college shortstop infielder at UC Davis. I did not go to broadcasting school. I wanted to get to the big leagues. I was a good college player, but not a draftable one. And so rather than go to law school, I thought maybe being a announcer would be more fun. And we did have a student radio station, so I did a little bit of that stuff, and with a little bit of that, and maybe some, uh, you know, overconfidence, I talked my way into a minor league hockey job in Spokane, Washington, and that was my first paying job. I'd never seen a hockey game live. I'd seen him on television back in the day with Peter Puck and all of that. So that was great. I was in Spokane for 2 or 3 years doing single A baseball, minor league hockey, small college football, basketball on the radio. Then I jumped up to double A in Wichita for a year and then to triple A with Las Vegas for 3 years. And my first job in the big leagues was doing post-game radio on weekends for the Mariners on Cairo and the Mariners radio network. Dave Grosby was the weekday guy. I was the weekend guy. And that turned into a little more stuff. Kevin Kremen, who should be in the Mariners Hall of Fame, their producer engineer for radio, liked my work. And I think he lobbied for me to host what used to be, I think they still do it, but it was the Mariners Sunday Magazine show, which was an hour-long show. Kevin and I worked on it. It was just a really fun show. That turned into pre and post hosting when the Mariners signed their first cable deal with what was then Prime Sports Northwest. Had like a 40 game package that first year. And I was doing all the sports on Prime Sports that nobody wanted to do. You know, at first they said, "Yeah, we don't need you." When I applied there and knocked on their door, because they wanted all the big names in Seattle sports to do their games, but they quickly realized that none of them wanted to do volleyball or soccer or college baseball. And so I got calls to do those sports. I think the combination of coming through the minors as a play-by-play announcer and being on their air helped me get that job. So I was the pre and post host. Then there were times where Dave or Rick needed somebody to fill in, and I still remember my first major league game was in '94. It was the Orioles and the Mariners in the Kingdom. I think Dave's daughter got married, and they did, and I got to do my first major league game, and that would turn into more than a handful of games every year. ESPN hired me in '97. I still did Mariner pre and post, but was also doing college football and some baseball for ESPN, and that continued through 2004, doing more and more stuff for the Mariners, and then I applied for and got the Miami Marlins job. And I was there for 13 years, had a great time along the way doing national games for Fox. The Mariner or the Marlin run ended in 2018, and picked up a bunch of work for MLB Network and the YouTube games. Um, I think I called a Mariner win a Mitch Haniger home run in the
Walk
rain,
off in the rain.
in the
Yep,
rain
I
on
remember that.
YouTube. And that YouTube was kind of the forerunner for all of the cable stuff, or not the cable stuff, but um, you know, the Netflix, the Apple TV,
Yeah,
the
streaming.
Peacock, the streaming stuff. Thank you. Um, and so MLB Network, I continued every year to do games for them, either on the showcase stuff, and then now the Apple Friday night stuff. And then I filled in for a lot of teams over the last few years as well when announcers get sick or they needed somebody, the Angels, the Diamondbacks, the Giants, and now the Mariners, which is awesome because it's a real short commute down to the ballpark.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing you got to do this year, I believe, is you got to do a little WBC. Can you talk about that experience?
Yeah, well, I kind of condensed my journey because
Yeah.
it would take a lot longer.
Oh yeah.
I mean, along the way there were other things, a lot of college and football and basketball
Hmm.
for ESPN and for Raycom, the SEC network, ACC folks as well for Fox. And now I've been with CBS for 11, I think it's 11 years now. But the World Baseball Classic, when I was in Florida, I got a call from a gentleman named Russ Gabay, who's sadly passed away. He was with MLB Network, and he asked me if I would do uh, the World Baseball Classic first round in Puerto Rico with Jim Cott. This is 2009, and I was in Miami, so proximity was pretty easy for me to get there. I had done a few games filling in for Matt on MLB Network, so they knew me and liked me. And I did that first round down there, which was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. It was the Dominican Republic beating, um, or excuse me, it was the Netherlands beating the Dominican Republic not once but twice.
Wow.
And the Dominican was, if you looked at Team USA this year and you said, "Damn, that's the best baseball roster ever," I go back and look at the 2009 Dominican World Baseball Classic roster. It's better. I mean, it's better. Um, and the Netherlands had Randall Simon, who is a guy that got suspended for taking a bat and hitting a racing sausage in Milwaukee. Um, Kenley Jansen. He was their catcher. Anyways, they beat him once, and it was like a fluke, and they had to beat him in the last game to advance, and they did, and just a miraculous thing. So that really hooked me on the World Baseball Classic, and I've done every one since. So this year in Houston was my fifth. Um, Unfortunately, I didn't get to work with Buck Martinez, a guy that I'd worked with on the three previous. Buck had retired about a month before, and so I worked with Dan Plesac and John Morosi, and it was awesome. I mean, just awesome. The games in Houston were great. We also had the quarterfinals with Team USA coming in along with Puerto Rico or was it Canada that came in? No, we had the US for the whole run, and Canada and Puerto Rico came in at the end. Um, it was awesome. I mean, the Team Italy, every time
Yeah.
I do one of these, there's a storyline. There's something that happens that is just like the coolest thing ever, whether it was the Netherlands then, whether it was Mexico in 2023 down in Phoenix and their upset of the USA, but Italy's run, you know, Canzone was there, all of that from Italy this year was just really cool. So I love that event. I've been there from not the very start, but close to the very start. And it's just awesome to see in the last, two or three of them, players, the best players in Major League Baseball, falling all over themselves to get on that team and get into that. So the WBC has been a real pleasure to be part of, and hopefully I'm a part of the next one.
Yeah, the Italy run was pretty cool, and I think you had the game where they clinched,
Oh yeah.
moving
Yeah.
on. That was a pretty cool moment,
Yeah, and
for
it's,
sure.
the fun part was just watching them with the espresso machine
Yeah.
first, and I think Canzone was the guy. It was a back-to-back home run deal, and Pasquantino was like the ringleader, and he had the machine and he had it going because it takes a while. I don't drink coffee or espresso, but it takes a while to cycle through and make it. So if someone homers, it may have been Caglione, and then Canzone follows with a home run, and apparently they didn't have enough time for the espresso shot to cool down. So by the time the second guy drank it, I think it was Canzone, he just literally spit it out on camera because it was so hot. And I'm sure his tongue was like leather for the next week. But and then they added the Italian suits. They
Yes.
one I'm sure one of the big leaguers took them all out, or they got a sponsorship deal with Canali or whoever. The next day they show up, you know how the TV has the walk-off shot of teams getting off the bus. Well, these guys are all coming out, you know, day one it was sweats and sweatshirts or whatever. Day two they're all in Italian suits. And
Yeah.
so that became a thing too.
Such a cool run for that group, and as you mentioned, Dom Canzone, part of it. Um, all right, question for you here. What was the best game you think you've broadcasted in baseball? Because you've been a part of a lot of pretty cool ones, and some pretty big ones on your resume. Which one is the most special to you?
It's hard to I mean, there's subcategories, right?
Hmm.
The first major league game, when you come from nothing and climb through the minor leagues and scratch and claw and make no money for a long time and do whatever you can to get there. That first major league game is like a big deal. So that Orioles Mariners game in '94 was huge. When I was in Spokane, I worked for the Spokane Indians, and they were owned by the Brett brothers, Bobby, George, Ken, and I can't remember the fourth brother's name. Anyways, they were great to me. They treated me so well in the 2 years. And one between seasons, Bobby, it was short A, so it was just like April of my second year. Bobby and the Bretts are from Southern California. Bobby had this really cool place. I think it was in Manhattan Beach. Um, he said, "Hey, why don't you come down and you can hang out in LA for 2 or 3 days and we'll go to a game." Because Ken was doing color on the Angels broadcast. So I went down there. It was awesome. I had no money, so I'm in the minor leagues. But Bobby said, "There's my scooter. You can ride around the Strand and do all that, and we'll go to the game on Tuesday night." So I went to the game, and Ken was just the nicest guy. I sat in the booth, and here I am in a big league booth, eyes wide open, and he was just awesome. And so fast forward probably 8, 9 years later, when I started to get some national games while doing Mariners pre and post and some ESPN stuff, I got called to do a game for FX, the FX game of the week. That was a thing. That's Fox back in the day. And the game was the Mets at the Diamondbacks, and Ken Brett was the analyst. And so that was a really cool moment, going from the first place, my first job in baseball, to suddenly the guy who was my boss or one of my bosses, I'm sitting next to on national TV. And sadly, he would pass away, I think 3 years later. So that's in the category of the first major league game you did. That's really special. The first game I did on Big Fox, the first game I did for MLB Network. As far as games themselves, I've been fortunate to call six no-hitters in Major League Baseball, including Roy Halladay's perfect game.
Yeah.
Um, that upset of the Netherlands, the second game over the Dominican, is still the most incredible game I've ever seen in terms of how is this team beating this team for the second time, and then falls behind and then pulls off an extra inning in miracle. Um, and that's baseball. So there's been plenty of football games on ESPN and CBS that came down to the wire and in big conferences. And basketball, there was a game Arizona State 3 years ago on CBS, where some kid from Arizona State hit a 65-foot shot at the buzzer to beat Arizona in Tucson. Um, so those are big games, memorable